There are a ton of conjunctions in the German language. I made a series of 4 videos that explain all of them in detail. This video is a compilation of those videos. I start with the coordinating conjunctions and then continue on to the subordinating conjunctions, two-part conjunctions, and adverbial conjunctions. All of these videos come with extra materials, including worksheets and answer keys and MP3 versions of the lessons. You can get all of that and more with my Everything Conjunctions bundle on my website germanwithantrim.com. I've linked that in the description. This video is not meant to be watched all at once. There is a ton of information in this video, so please make sure to take breaks and let your brain absorb the information before moving on to the next part. All of the lessons contained within this video are a part of my A2 Elementary German course. The course textbook is available on my website germanwithantrim.com or Amazon as an ebook or paperback book. The book reinforces the lessons that are taught in the video version, which is available completely for free on YouTube. You can watch the course in 3 formats. The first way is the way that I intended it to be consumed, which is a mixture of grammar lessons and listening comprehension lessons all together. The other 2 options are split with the grammar lessons in one video and the listening comprehension exercises in another. All of those videos, along with all of the links to the course book and other things, are linked in the description. And now, on to the lessons. Conjunction, junction, what's your function? Hooking up words and phrases and clauses. Conjunction, junction, what's your function? Hooking up words and phrases and clauses. This song is a classic, and it explains perfectly what conjunctions do. They connect words, phrases, and clauses. In this lesson, you will learn how to use coordinating conjunctions in German. Specifically, I will focus on und, oder, aber, and denn, but I will also explain a few other more obscure German coordinating conjunctions. There are 3 main categories of conjunctions in German. The first category of German conjunctions is coordinating conjunctions. They're the easiest to use, which is why we are going to start with them. In future videos, I'll explain the other 2 categories of German conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions, and the two-part conjunctions. Coordinating conjunctions are easier to use than other German conjunctions because they do not affect word order. Subordinating conjunctions require word order changes, and two-part conjunctions require you to understand where to put both parts. Coordinating conjunctions are super easy, barely an inconvenience. As I mentioned in the intro, conjunctions are words that connect parts of sentences together, including words, phrases, and clauses. The difference between each of the conjunctions is how they connect them. Sometimes they connect them into a list. Other times the connection is showing that the words on each side of the conjunction are not in the same group. You'll understand more what I mean when we go through this lesson, but think about that each time we talk about a new conjunction. What is this conjunction saying about the connection between these words, phrases, or clauses? The first and most common coordinating conjunction in German is und. It means and is used just like in English. This conjunction shows you that the words, phrases, or clauses that are connected with it are in the same group. This is great for building lists. You simply add it before the last thing on the list, and now you have a connection between the things on your list. Let's try some examples. Ich habe eine Katze, einen Hund und einen Fisch. I have a cat, a dog, and a fish. In this sentence, I connected 3 words with the conjunction und. It shows you that I don't just have a dog or a cat or a fish, I have all 3. You'll notice that I use the article in front of each noun. This is necessary to show the gender and case like you normally would. Also, notice that there is no comma between the second to last word and und. This is what we call an Oxford comma in English, and in German this does not exist. When making a list of words or phrases in German, don't add a comma before und. You can also connect a phrase or clause with und. Ich bringe meinem Hund Wasser und meiner Katze Milch. I am bringing my dog water and my cat milk. Here we connected the phrase meinem Hund Wasser with meiner Katze Milch. These 2 phrases are more than just one word, which is what we connected in the previous example. Mein Hund trinkt das Wasser und meine Katze leckt sich. My dog drinks the water and my cat licks itself. This sentence connects 2 full sentences, which we classify as clauses when they're pushed together like this. You can do this with the conjunction und. These are just a few of the examples of how you can use this conjunction. Try it out in the comments. Write your own sentences using und, and I will take a look to make sure your grammar is right. Next up we have oder, which means or. This is used to create lists as well, but the relationship between the things is different than when we used und. If you use oder, you are saying that the things on the list are not in the same group, but rather that just one of them is. Basically, you're saying that the English conjunction or is the exact same thing as oder. Just like und, you can connect words, phrases, or clauses with oder. Möchten Sie eine Cola, ein Bier oder ein Glas Wein? Would you like a soda, a beer, or a glass of wine? Möchtest du einen Kaffee trinken, einen Film sehen oder baden gehen? Would you like to drink a coffee, see a film, or go swimming? Wollt ihr mit uns fahren oder sollen wir alleine fahren? Would you like to drive with us, or should we drive alone? Another conjunction that is often left off of lists like this one is beziehungsweise. It's one of the most commonly used conjunctions, but it's also somewhat difficult to really understand all of the nuances of it. If you break apart the word, you can see what its real use is. Beziehung is a relationship. Weise is a manner or a way in which you do something. This word shows a relationship between two or more things. This definition gives the word the flexibility needed to fit all of the definitions that I'm about to give you. You will often see beziehungsweise abbreviated as BZW. Ich habe 3 Kinder, beziehungsweise 2 Söhne und eine Tochter. I have 3 children, more precisely, 2 sons and a daughter. You can also use beziehungsweise to mean something like as the case may be. Man muss die Wörter kennen, sie zu sagen beziehungsweise zu schreiben. You have to know the words in order to say them or to write them, as the case may be. Sometimes you translate it as respectively. Heute verkaufe ich Erdbeeren und Bananen. Sie sind rot beziehungsweise gelb. Today I am selling strawberries and bananas. They are red and yellow respectively. One of the most useful conjunctions, and one I personally believe is underutilized by German learners, is denn. It means because. All of the other conjunctions in German that mean because are subordinating conjunctions, which means they change the word order. If you are just starting to learn German, you should definitely acquaint yourself with the word denn, because it can cure you of your lack of a way to say because in German. Denn cannot connect single words. It is used to connect clauses. It shows a reasoning for the other clause. Here are a few examples of denn. Ich muss jeden Tag arbeiten, denn ich brauche das Geld. I have to work every day because I need the money. Macht sich keine Sorgen, denn weiß, dass die finstere Stunde kurz vor der Dämmerung erscheint. He isn't worried because he knows that the darkest hour comes just before the dawn. Sie ist traurig, denn ihr Hund ist gestern gestorben. She is sad because her dog died yesterday. All of the rest of the conjunctions for today mean but. They each have their own subtle differences and specific uses. The first one is by far the most commonly used and the most versatile of them all. This word is aber. Ich habe einen Hund und einen Fisch, aber keine Katze. I have a dog and a fish, but no cat. Mein Bruder möchte gute Noten in der Schule bekommen, aber macht seine Hausaufgaben nicht. My brother would like to get good grades in school, but he doesn't do his homework. Wir haben unsere Nachbarn eingeladen, aber keiner ist gekommen. We invited our neighbors, but none came. Hat kein Geld, aber kauft trotzdem ein neues Auto. He doesn't have any money, but is buying a car in spite of that. Another conjunction in German that means but is sondern. This word is a bit more than just but, however. It includes a connotation of rather. It shows that the thing mentioned before the conjunction is being negated by the thing after it. This means that the conjunction sondern must be used after a negation of some sort. For example, ich bin nicht hässlich, sondern mittelmäßig. I'm not ugly, but rather mediocre. Das ist keine Katze, sondern ein Hund. This isn't a cat, but rather a dog. Die Frau fährt nicht mit dem Bus, sondern mit dem Zug. The woman isn't riding the bus, but rather the train. Mein Bruder studiert nicht Mathe, sondern arbeitet als Mechaniker. My brother isn't studying math, but rather works as a mechanic. Next up we have allein. When this isn't used as a conjunction, this word means alone. This gives you a little insight into how this is used as a conjunction. It's like saying, but with this one exception. It's pretty rare to see this used as a conjunction, but I wanted to include it on my list to make sure that it was complete. Personally, I remember the meaning of this conjunction from a line in Rapunzel. When the man goes to the witch's garden to steal the Rapunzel plant for the third time, the witch catches him and says she will let him go with one exception. The line is as follows. Verhält es sich so, wie du sagst, so will ich dir gestatten, Rapunzel mitzunehmen, so viel du willst. Allein ich mache eine Bedienung. Du musst mir das Kind geben, das deine Frau zur Welt bringen wird. If it is as you say, I will allow you to take as much Rapunzel with you as you like. But I make one request or condition. You have to give me the child that your wife will bring to the world. This was the first instance when I encountered a line as a conjunction, and it reminds me that this is kind of elevated speech, or at the very least not commonly used. You might equate it with the English alas to help you get the idea of how it's used. Here are a few more examples from Goethe's tragic play Faust. Die Botschaft höre ich wohl, allein mir fehlt der Glaube. I hear the message, alas, I lack the belief. Die Kraft ist schwach, allein die Lust ist groß. The strength is weak, alas, the desire is great. A common but sometimes confusing conjunction that also means but is doch. Doch is more closely related to the English conjunction however. It shows a contrast between what comes before the conjunction and what comes after it. Wir haben unsere Nachbarn eingeladen, doch keiner ist gekommen. We invited our neighbors, however none came. Ist müde, doch muss mehr lernen. He is tired, but he has to learn more. Ich höre normalerweise nur Rockmusik, doch Eminem finde ich gut. I usually only listen to rock music, however I find Eminem good. A slightly more emphatic version of doch is jedoch. It has pretty much the same meaning as doch, but adds a little bit of strength to the meaning. It isn't technically a conjunction, however, it's an adverb. Not that the terminology really matters, but the effect it has on the sentence does. Since it's an adverb, it bumps the subject to the other side of the verb, just like any other time you start with a sentence or a clause with anything other than the subject. Der General wurde verletzt, jedoch zeigte es seinen Truppen nicht. The general was injured, however he doesn't show it to his troops. Das Konzert war großartig, jedoch auch sehr laut. The concert was great, however also very loud. Behauptet, wir haben gewonnen, jedoch haben wir gar nicht angefangen. He claims we have won, however we haven't even started. If you're enjoying this video so far, you will love my A2 German course. This course is designed to help you master the German grammar and vocabulary at the A2 level. Check out the links in the description to find it, or just search for Elementary German with Herr Antrim wherever you do your searching. Not only will I explain the word order and sentence structure rules for these subordinating conjunctions, but I will also explain how to use each of the subordinating conjunctions, including als ob, before, bis, da, damit, das, falls, indem, nachdem, ob, gleich, obschon, obwohl, seit, seitdem, sobald, so dass, so lange, so oft, während, weil, wenn, and wohingegen. Due to the large number of conjunctions in this category, this video will explain each one in broad strokes. If you are struggling with the more subtle differences between certain conjunctions, leave a comment down below about which ones you would like to see grouped together in a video, and I'll make a list of videos that need to be made about these conjunctions based on your comments. First on my list of subordinating conjunctions is als. This conjunction most often translates as when. It can only be used with the past tense, however. This is different than the next conjunction on my list, wenn, which can be used with the past tense, but most often isn't. Let's take a look at a few examples of how als works in sentences. Ich war schon weg, als meine Mutter nach Hause kam. I was already gone when my mother came home. In this sentence, I used als in the second clause. This clause is called the subordinate clause. That's because we're using a subordinating conjunction. Subordinating conjunctions require clauses that cannot stand on their own. If I say, als meine Mutter nach Hause kam, people will be waiting for the rest of the sentence, as this is not complete. There are two types of clauses that we need to concern ourselves with today. Mr. and Mrs. No, wait, different video. Hauptsatz and Nebensatz. Hauptsatz refers to the clause that could stand on its own. In English, we call this the main clause. In our first example, this would be Ich war schon weg. If the main clause is first, the word order is normal in that clause. The second type of clause is the one that starts with our subordinating conjunction. This is called a Nebensatz, or a subordinate clause in English. This clause will always have the conjugated verb at the end. This does not change anything else about the word order in that clause. All you do is take the verb from its normal spot next to the subject and put it at the end of the clause. In our first example, this is why kam is at the end of als meine Mutter nach Hause kam. So the word order rule number 1 for subordinating conjunctions such as als is when the Nebensatz, or the subordinate clause, is second, put the conjugated verb at the end of that clause. The word order for the Hauptsatz, or the main clause, is not affected. Word order rule number 2 is when the Nebensatz is first, put the conjugated verbs of both clauses in the middle of the sentence next to the comma. For example, als meine Mutter nach Hause kam, war ich schon weg. When my mother came home, I was already gone. Notice that kam and va are on either side of the comma in the middle of the sentence. This could be described as having the subordinate clause with a verb at the end and a main clause with the verb at the beginning. But I usually just refer to it as a verb cluster around a comma. That's the basics of the word order rules for subordinate clauses. If the subordinate clause is second, the verb in the subordinate clause moves to the end of the sentence. If the subordinate clause is first, the verbs in both clauses are placed next to the comma in the middle of the sentence. Let's go back to some practice examples of als. Als die Schulglocke ertönte, gingen die Schüler nach Hause. When the school bell rang, the students went home. Als das Mädchen das Klavier zum Strand gebracht hat, haben die Strandbesucher gestarrt. When the girl brought the piano to the beachgoers stared. Die Strandbesucher waren erstaunt, als sie das gesehen haben. The beach visitors were surprised when they saw that. Pinocchio wurde erschreckt, als der Wal ihn verschluckte. Pinocchio was scared when the whale swallowed him. While als can only be used in the past, the conjunction wenn can be used with all of the tenses. If you want to use it with the past, however, you're probably going to need a qualifier before wenn. You should indicate how often it occurred in the past when you use wenn. For example, immer wenn ich Kekse aß, aß ich sehr viele. Always when I ate cookies, I ate a lot. Jedes Mal, wenn ein blaues Auto sah, schlug mich. Every time when he saw a blue car, he hit me. Some websites will tell you that wenn is used in 4 different ways. 1. To show a condition. Wenn es regnet, spiele ich im Haus. When it rains, I play in the house. Number 2. Temporal use. Jedes Mal, wenn ich einen Hund sehe, muss ich ihn streicheln. Every time when I see a dog, I have to pet him. Number 3. Concession. Wenn auch nicht klar ist, was man machen sollte, even if it's not clear what is to be done. Number 4. Wishes. Wenn ich wüsste, hätte ich etwas anderes gemacht. If I had known, I would have done something different. Most of this is nonsense. The reason you use qualifiers like immer or jedes Mal in front of wenn when it's used in the past tense is that it introduces a condition. This is the only thing it ever does. It cannot have anything to do with the temporal part of the sentence, as this is explained by adverbs and tenses. It doesn't have anything to do with wishes. This part is done by the verbs that are used. It simply introduces a condition. Depending on this condition and whether or not it is met dictates the rest of the sentence. The condition introduction aspect of this conjunction is why wenn is often translated as if. Let's take a look at a few more examples and examine the true purpose of this conjunction. Immer wenn ich Geburtstag hatte, sah ich meinen Vater, aber wenn es nicht mein Geburtstag wäre, hätte ich ihn nicht gesehen. Always when I had a birthday, I saw my father, but if it weren't my birthday, I wouldn't see him. Here we have 2 different uses of this conjunction. Some would say that the first shows the temporal use and the second shows the conditional, meaning that it triggers the subjunctive mood. In reality, both simply introduce a condition. The first condition being that I had a birthday, and the second condition being that it were not my birthday. The use of the subjunctive mood, or the lack thereof, is not dependent upon the use of the conjunction, but rather whether or not what we want to express is contrary to reality. As for the temporal use of the first clause, it's actually the word immer and the use of the past tense that tells you when this happened. The conjunction simply gives us the condition. A synonym to wenn is falls. Unlike wenn, however, falls cannot be translated as when. It is more closely related to in case. As with wenn, it introduces a condition. Unlike wenn, it doesn't lend itself very well to Konjunktiv 2 or the subjunctive mood in German. Let's look at a few examples to help you see what I mean. Falls du Hunger hast, gibt es Essen im Kühlschrank. In case you have hunger or are hungry, there is food in the refrigerator. Wenn du Hunger hast, gibt es Essen im Kühlschrank. If you have hunger or are hungry, there is food in the refrigerator. In these sentences, there is practically no difference between wenn and falls. To me, falls draws more attention to the condition than wenn does, but that's about the only difference between them. Wir haben ein Babyphone im Kinderzimmer, falls das Baby aufwacht. We have a baby monitor in the nursery in case the baby wakes up. Wir haben ein Babyphone im Kinderzimmer, wenn das Baby aufwacht. We have a baby monitor in the nursery if the baby wakes up. This time there is a bigger difference. When we use falls, it indicated that the baby monitor was always there, so that on the occasion that the baby wakes up, we would hear it. In the sentence with wenn, it indicates that we would own a baby phone if the baby wakes up. As long as the baby is asleep, there is no baby phone. If the baby wakes up, suddenly there's a baby phone. Seems counterproductive. To be fair, most people would interpret wenn as the same as falls in this instance, as putting the baby monitor in the room after the baby wakes up would be dumb. But it would be much better to simply use falls in this instance so that there is no confusion. Here are some more examples of falls. Falls meine Mutter anruft, bin ich nicht zu Hause. In case my mother calls, I'm not at home. Ich habe einen Leibwächter, falls ich Carol Baskin treffe. I have a bodyguard in case I meet Carol Baskin. Next up is another conjunction that translates as if. This conjunction is ob, but unlike the flexibility that is allowed by wenn, this conjunction can only be used with yes-no type of phrases. This does not mean that the answers that you can use are only yes or no, but that there are only a clear set of options. For example, meine Mutter will wissen, ob du bis zum Abendessen bleibst. My mother wants to know if you will stay for dinner. This sentence doesn't include yes or no, but the response to it does. Ja, ich bleibe. Yes, I'm staying. Nein, ich bleibe nicht. No, I'm not staying. Ob wirklich ein Pilot ist, wissen wir nicht. If he is really a pilot, we don't know. Again, we have two options for the response. Ja, ist Pilot. Yes, he is a pilot. Nein, ist kein Pilot. No, he is not a pilot. As was shown in the last example, we don't actually need to know the answer, and we don't need to list both options in order to use ob. If the second option isn't just a negated version of the first option, however, you do need to include it in the sentence. For example, wir haben uns noch nicht entschieden, ob wir ins Kino oder zum Abendessen gehen. We haven't yet decided if we are going to the movies or to dinner. It doesn't have to be limited to just two options, you can also add more. Wir haben uns noch nicht entschieden, ob wir ins Kino, nach Hause oder zum Abendessen gehen. We haven't decided yet if we are going to the movies, home, or dinner. Although ob means if, it is not interchangeable with wenn or falls. For instance, ich habe ihn gefragt, ob mitkommt. I asked him if he is coming along. Ich habe ihn gefragt, falls mitkommt. I asked him in case he is coming along. The first one indicates that we simply asked if he was coming along or not. The second option says that we asked him the question, but it was somehow dependent upon him coming along. For instance, if he were in a group of others, some of whom were going to the beach, but you weren't sure which ones, you could ask the entire group whatever the question was, just in case some of them went and you needed the answer to your question. If you were to use wenn in that sentence, it would be a bit difficult, as it would indicate that the act has already been done sometime in the future when the condition has been met, and then you asked. Anyway, the point is, ob, falls, and wenn are not interchangeable. To bring it all full circle, there is also als ob, which combines the first conjunction I explained, als, and ob, which I just explained. When I showed you the examples of als earlier, I left out that you could also translate als as. For example, als meine Mutter nach Hause kam, war ich schon weg. As my mother came home, I was already gone. With this in mind, you can see how als ob is used. It's used with the condition created by ob and the time indicated by als. This puts them together to form as if. This makes it so you assume the condition set up by ob was met. For example, küsst sie, als ob sie liebt. He kisses her as if he loves her. Tanzt wild herum, als ob seine Hose brennt. He dances wildly about as if his pants were on fire. Legt mir Handschellen an, als ob ich ein Verbrecher wäre. He cuffed me, or put handcuffs on me, as if I were a criminal. As you can see, contrary to what some believe, you can use als ob with or without the conjunctive zwei or subjunctive mood in German. Ob is also used at the beginning of other conjunctions. There are 3 of these: obgleich, obschon, and obwohl. Most German learners will only be familiar with obwohl, as obgleich and obschon aren't as widely used. The meaning is exactly the same no matter what. I would personally recommend that you simply learn how to use obwohl and just keep in the back of your mind that obgleich and obschon are just archaic ways of saying the same thing. All of them just mean although. Here are a few examples. Obwohl DC Comics bessere Figuren hat, macht Marvel bessere Filme. Although DC Comics has better characters, Marvel makes better films. Batman wird in Filmen nur als Rohling dargestellt, obwohl höchst intelligent ist. Batman is portrayed only as a brute in films, although he is highly intelligent. Obwohl der Schlüssel in das Türschloss passt, kann ich die Tür nicht öffnen. Although the key fits into the door lock, I can't open the door. The conjunction weil is one of the most popular German subordinating conjunctions, as it means because. It is used mostly like the English word, but obviously it changes the word order, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video. It is more common to use weil in the second clause, but it is acceptable to use it as the first clause in a sentence, even though it is not okay for you to use because at the beginning of an English sentence. Ich werde dick, weil ich zu viele Kekse esse. I'm getting fat because I eat too many cookies. Ich halte 1,5 Meter Abstand, weil ich andere Menschen meiden möchte. Covid-19 ist nur eine Ausrede dafür. I keep 1.5 meters away because I want to avoid other people. Covid-19 is just an excuse for that. Weil ich kein Geld habe, kaufe ich keine Videospiele. Because I don't have any money, I don't buy any video games. Another word that means because is da. This one is considered slightly more formal than weil is, and is more common to see this one in the first clause of a sentence rather than weil. Other than those 2 slight differences, weil and da are pretty much interchangeable. If you find yourself unsure which you should use, weil or da, you should probably use da, as is the more formal of the 2. Personally, however, I use weil much more often than I use da, as I don't find myself in a lot of formal discussions in German, and I'm usually just talking amongst friends, and weil just seems to feel right. Here are a few examples with da. Da Else den Fjord zugefroren hat, musste Anna sie finden. Because Elsa froze the fjord, Anna had to find her. Da mein Computer kaputt ist, möchte ich einen neuen kaufen. Because my computer is broken, I would like to buy a new one. Ich habe keinen Computer gekauft, da ich kein Geld habe. I didn't buy a computer because I don't have any money. While both weil and da explain the reason or the cause for some action, damit introduces a clause that shows why something is done. It's similar to so that or in order to in English. And if you giggled when I said damit, you are exactly the kind of viewer that I'm looking for. Check out these examples with damit. Damit ich nicht auf die Toilette im Bahnhof muss, trinke ich nur einen Kaffee am Morgen. So that I don't have to go to the bathroom in the train station, I only drink 1 coffee in the morning. Sie wacht sehr früh auf, damit sie etwas Arbeit erledigen kann. She wakes up very early so she can get some work done. Ich trage eine Fliege, damit ich cool aussehe. I wear a bow tie so that I look cool. A confusing conjunction even for native speakers is das. The reason it's confusing is because the definite article das and the relative pronoun that is based off of that article also exist. When speaking, you can barely tell a difference between das and das. Technically, das has 2 S's and a short vowel sound, while das has a long vowel sound and 1 S. In practice, the difference is negligible. When writing, however, the difference is an important one to make, as they mean different things. das means that, while das means that. See? Totally different, not confusing at all. The easy version is that das, with one s, refers back to a noun, while das, with two s's, does not. You can replace das, with one s, with dieses, jenes, or welches, and it would still make sense. If one of those words doesn't work, you need two s's. Honestly, you'll find that only people who are overly pedantic care whether you have two s's or just one. Those people include teachers, grammar nerds, and people who are feverishly writing in the comments right now to prove me wrong. Here are a few examples with both so you understand the difference anyway. Mein Bruder sagt, dass ein neues Auto gekauft hat. My brother says that he bought a new car. In this sentence, das isn't referring to some neuter noun. It's introducing a clause that gives more information about the action from the first clause, namely, what my brother said. Das ist das Auto, das mein Bruder gekauft hat. This is the car that my brother bought. In this sentence, das refers back to das Auto, which is a neuter noun, which is why we chose this version with only one s. Mein Bruder sagt, dass das Auto gekauft hat, das mein Vater einmal besaß. My brother says that he bought the car that my father once owned. This time I used both das and das. The first one indicates more information about the first clause, which means that we used das with two s's. The second one refers back to das Auto, which is why we use das with only one s for that one. Ich denke, dass das ganz einfach ist. I think that this is quite simple. The first das adds more information to the first clause, so we use two s's. The second das does not refer to something specific this time, which is why we chose the neuter article to begin with, but it only has one s as it's referring to something, namely, whatever it is that is quite simple. Now that you kind of understand what the difference between das and das is, here's one more example that is sure to confuse you. Weißt du dass das meistverwendete Wort in diesem Satz ist? Did you know that the is the most used word in this sentence? Along the same lines as damit is so das. It literally is the German equivalent of so that, and is used basically the same way. An alternative translation would be so as. It's very similar to the conjunction damit. Again, don't forget that the word order changes based on where so das is used. Ich kaufe jede Woche Kekse, so dass es immer einige zu Hause gibt. I buy cookies every week, so that there are always some at home. Der Mobber brüllt den Jungen an, so dass weint. The bully yells at the boy so that he cries. Das Mädchen hilft dem Jungen, so dass sie ihn beruhigt. The girl helps the boy so as to comfort him. The girl helps the boy so that she comforts him. If you use dadurch in the main clause and das to connect the subordinate clause, it means the same thing as the subordinating conjunction indem. Both of these mean something like by means of. You will often see them translated as while, but the translation doesn't really encompass what's really going on. For example, man kann sehr viel Deutsch dadurch lernen, dass man Videos von Herrn Antrim schaut. One can learn a lot of German while watching videos from Herr Antrim. Man kann sehr viel Deutsch lernen, indem man Videos von Herrn Antrim schaut. One can learn a lot of German while watching videos from Herr Antrim. In both of these sentences, you could translate dadurch das and indem with while, but the true meaning is more like by means of, as it shows the way in which you do something via the conjunction. It shows the medium through which the action takes place. Here are a few more examples with dadurch das and indem. Hat sehr viel abgenommen, indem jeden Tag 3 Kilometer rennt. He has lost a lot of weight by running 3 kilometers every day. Hat sehr viel dadurch abgenommen, dass jeden Tag 3 Kilometer rennt. He has lost a lot of weight by running 3 kilometers every day. Another subordinating conjunction that is often translated as while is wohingegen. This is used to express a juxtaposition of the two clauses. This action in the first clause does this, while this action in the second clause does that. As you can see, you can use here while. That being said, you could also use whereas. This avoids the ambiguity of having too many conjunctions that all mean while. Let's try a few examples of wohingegen. Ich habe 2 Kinder und bin seit 2010 verheiratet. Wohingegen mein Bruder 3 Kinder hat und seit 2019 geschieden ist. I have 2 children and have been married since 2010, whereas my brother has 3 children and has been divorced since 2019. Das Kind auf der rechten Seite hat nur einen Keks, wohingegen das Kind auf der linken Seite schon 15 gegessen hat. The child on the right side has only 1 cookie, whereas the child on the left side has already eaten 15. Elche tragen ein großes, schweres Geweih, wohingegen Rehböcke ein kleines und leichtes Geweih haben. Elk have large, heavy antlers, while deer, or stags, have small, light antlers. The rest of the conjunctions for today all have to do with time. Don't confuse the fact that I just said the rest of the conjunctions with we're almost done here, hooray! There are 12 of them. Some are more used than others, so let's just start with the easy stuff, the befores. There are 2 subordinating conjunctions in German that mean before. There's the easy one, bevor, which is the same as the English version, and then there's eher, which also has an English equivalent, but it's just as unused as eher. The word is er. Anyway, let's look at some examples to see what I'm talking about. Der Mann trinkt noch ein Glas Wein, bevor nach Hause geht. The man drinks another glass of wine before he goes home. Bevor ins Bett geht, putzt sich die Zähne. Before he goes to bed, he brushes his teeth. Meine Hündin dreht sich im Kreis, bevor sie sich hinlegt. My dog walks in a circle before she lays down. These 3 examples are pretty simple and straightforward. They are normal sentences. That's because before is just like the English before, but it's only used as a conjunction. When you use the English before with a noun, you need vor in German. When you use it on its own, you need davor or vorher in German. The other one, eher, is archaic or at the very least uncommon. You can use eher anywhere that you can use before, just don't. Unless you're a fedora-wearing, neckbeard-having basement dweller who tips their hat when passing a woman on the street and greets them with "milady," you don't need eher. You should be aware of its existence, however, so you can recognize when it shows up in fairy tales and other stuff like that. Here are a few examples of eher. Aschenputtel musste nach Hause, ehe ihre Kutsche wieder ein Kürbis wurde. Cinderella had to go home, ere her carriage became a pumpkin again. Der, wer die Brücke des Todes überqueren möchte, muss die 3 Fragen beantworten, ehe die andere Seite sieht. He who would cross the bridge of death must answer me these questions 3, ere the other side he see. This is not the actual movie quote in the German version, as it doesn't use ehe in the actual German version of the film, for the sake of the rhyme. Here's the real German version. Wer über die Brücke des Todes will gehen, der muss 3-mal Rede und Antwort stehen, dann darf die andere Seite sehen. He who would cross the bridge of death must answer me these questions 3, ere the other side he see. While before and ehe both talk about the time before something occurs, the conjunction bis expresses the time before and leading up to the occurrence. The translation is until. Here are a few examples of it in action. Ich werde dich lieben, bis das letzte Sternchen ausgeht. I will love you until the last star goes out. Bis sein Geld bekommt, hört nicht auf, dir zu folgen. Until he gets his money, he will not stop following you. Kann kaum abwarten, bis sie wieder sieht. He can hardly wait until he sees her again. Quick side note here, notice that we put wieder and sehen back together at the end of the sentence. Normally, wieder sehen would have been split because it's a separable prefix, but since we're using this at the end of a sentence with a subordinate clause, we're using this here as wieder sieht, together but still conjugated. When you want to use while in the traditional sense, not the other ways that I've already mentioned in this video, you need während. Yes, this is another one that doubles as a genitive preposition. Again, the easy way to tell if this is a preposition or a conjunction is where it's located within the sentence and what words are around it. If there is a noun attached to während, you are working with a preposition, and that noun should be in the genitive case. If you have what is essentially an entire sentence with a verb at the end, you're working with a conjunction. Here are a few examples of während as a conjunction. Während mein Bruder schläft, rasiere ich ihm die Haare. While my brother is sleeping, I shave his hair. Was hast du gemacht, während ich den ganzen Haushalt erledigt habe? What did you do while I did all of the housework? Das Böse triumphiert, während gute Menschen nichts tun. Evil triumphs when good men do nothing. So lange translates as long as, but it could be another word that means while. It works in the same way that the English does as well. Just keep in mind that if you can't say as long as when you say while, you need one of the other conjunctions that I've mentioned previously in this video. Here are a few examples of so lange. Solange ich meinen Kaffee bekomme, wird niemand verletzt werden. As long as I get my coffee, no one will get hurt. Der Tiger ist ganz nett, solange Don nicht mit ihm im Käfig ist. The tiger is quite nice, so long as Don isn't in the cage with him. Diese Tür können Sie für 30 € kaufen, solange sie auf Lager ist. You can buy this door for 30 euros as long as it is still in stock. If you need a way to say as soon as in German, use the subordinating conjunction sobald. Here are a few examples of that. Sobald ich zu Hause bin, nehme ich die Fliege ab. As soon as I am at home, I take off the bow tie. Die Gottesanbeterin frisst ihren Partner, sobald die Paarung zu Ende ist. The praying mantis eats her partner as soon as the mating is over. This is actually sort of a myth. They're simply cannibals. They eat each other all the time. Males eat other males, or they'll eat females. Females will eat either males or females. It doesn't really matter. When it happens isn't even that important either. Sometimes they'll eat each other while still mating. The more you know. Sobald sein Gehalt bekommt, gibt es aus. As soon as he gets his paycheck, he spends it. You can use so oft to mean as often as, or whenever. Pro tip, it isn't zooft, or zoft, or soft, or any of those other pronunciation errors that you are trying. The correct pronunciation is two completely separate, different sounding O's. The first one is a long O in so. The second one is a short O in oft. While Duden officially lists this as one word, it does show that it can be written as two words in their example sentences. There is nothing wrong with writing it as two words, so oft. Here are a few examples of so oft in action. So oft ich Geld bekomme, wird etwas in meinem Haus kaputt. As often as I get money, something in my house breaks. Der Priester hilft seinen Pfarrangehörigen, so oft sie Hilfe benötigen. The priest helps his parishioners as often as they need help. So oft ich ins Haus trete, ist mein Hund froh, mich zu sehen. As often as I step into the house, my dog is happy to see me. You may be familiar with the preposition nach, which means after, but do you know how to use nachdem? This is a conjunction version of after, and it's similar to its construction of indem or trotzdem, and the one that we haven't talked about yet, seitdem. Grammar nerd side note, this probably has something to do with the way that German evolved over time. Since seit, nach, and trotz all are prepositions, they generally are followed by nouns. Most of the nouns are going to be either masculine or neuter, which in the dative case is dem. Over time, this article became attached to the preposition in order to form the conjunctions that we now know and love. And much to your German teacher's dismay, this also means that trotz is and was often used with the dative case instead of the genitive case that is shown in your textbook, and in videos on this very YouTube channel. With that out of the way, here are some examples with nachdem. Nachdem ich meinen Regenschirm zu Hause gelassen habe, regnete es. After I left my umbrella at home, it rained. Meine Schüler dürfen zocken, nachdem sie ihre Hausaufgaben gemacht haben. My students can play video games after they have done their homework. Nachdem du dieses Video gesehen hast, solltest du ein paar von den Konjunktionen in Sätzen in die Kommentare schreiben. After you have watched this video, you should write a few of the conjunctions in sentences in the comments. The last conjunction for this video is actually two. They mean the same thing and can be used interchangeably, however, so they're basically still just one. Also, one of them is infinitely more common than the other, so there's that too. Seit and seitdem. Most of the time, seit is a preposition, whereas seitdem is the one that's often used as a conjunction. However, you can use seit as a conjunction and seitdem as an adverb. When seit is a preposition, it's followed by a noun or a pronoun in the dative case. When seitdem is used as an adverb, it is simply used like any other time element within the sentence. It acts alone and goes either before the direct object or before any of the other adverbs and prepositional phrases. When either of them are used as a conjunction, they introduce a clause and connect it to another one. Since the meaning doesn't change no matter which one of these you use, I'll just use the same examples for both. Just keep in mind that seitdem is much more common. Seitdem mein Hund gestorben ist, bin ich traurig, wenn ich immer noch seine Haare im Haus finde. Since my dog died, I am sad when I still find his hair in my house. Yep, you can use more than one subordinating conjunction in a single sentence, and you can make both of them use different versions of the word order rules that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. The first part uses the subordinating conjunction first, which pushes the conjugated verbs to the middle by the comma. The second part introduces another clause with another subordinating conjunction, which pushes the conjugated verb in that clause to the end of the clause. There is a lot going on in that sentence. Seitdem du weg bist, kann ich zum ersten Mal durchatmen. Since you've been gone, I can breathe for the first time. Seit du weg bist, kann ich zum ersten Mal durchatmen. Since you've been gone, I can breathe for the first time. Dieses Lied bleibt in seiner Erinnerung, seitdem es zum ersten Mal gehört hat. This song stays in his memory since he first heard it. If you're enjoying this video so far, you will love my A2 German course. This course is designed to help you master the German grammar and vocabulary at the A2 level. Check out the links in the description to find it, or just search for Elementary German with Herr Antrim wherever you do your searching. What are two-part conjunctions? Well, as the name implies, they are conjunctions that are used in two parts. That's a terrible definition. How about they are words that connect other words, phrases, or clauses, but require you to put one piece in one half of the sentence and another piece in another half? That's a bit wordy, but at least it's more precise. Basically, these are words that we use in two different parts of a sentence to connect words, phrases, and clauses within that sentence. Luckily for everyone involved, most of these conjunctions are considered coordinating. That means that they don't change the word order. The most difficult part about using them is knowing where to put them. Once you have that down and you know what they mean, you can use them with no problem. First up is the combination of entweder and oder. In English, we use either and or. This conjunction connects two or more options and sets them up so that you can only have one. You know, like that Venn diagram that shows you your options as a student. Good grades, enough sleep, or a social life, choose two. In order to use this conjunction and others on this list that are also coordinating two-part conjunctions, you put entweder, or whatever the first part is, in front of the first option or the first half. Then you put oder, or the second half of the conjunction, before you start the second option or the second half of the sentence. You can use these two parts to introduce an entire clause or simply a word or two. Let's start with a couple of words. Ich möchte entweder einen Fox-Terrier oder einen Schäferhund. I would like either a fox terrier or a German shepherd. Hätte entweder gern einen Tee oder einen Kaffee. He would like either a tea or a coffee. When you use a two-part conjunction to connect two complete clauses, you need to have each part at the beginning of the respective clause, meaning that the first half of the conjunction goes at the beginning of the first half of the sentence, and the second half of the conjunction goes at the beginning of the second half of the sentence. For example, entweder du stirbst als Held oder du lebst lang genug, der Böse zu werden. Either you die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Harvey Dent. Entweder schreib etwas Lesenswertes oder tue etwas Schreibenswertes. Either write something worth reading or do something worth writing. Benjamin Franklin. An alternative version of this quote could be, schreib entweder Dinge, die lesenswert sind, oder tue Dinge, die schreibenswert sind. Either write something worth reading or do something worth writing. Benjamin Franklin. In this version, you see that entweder isn't at the beginning of its clause. This is due to the special nature of entweder. I can put it at the beginning of the sentence or just after the verb. I could have said it with entweder as the first word and it would have still been correct. Just don't forget that while oder can be used on its own, entweder cannot. It must be used in conjunction with oder. You can have more than two options with entweder oder. For example, ich möchte entweder einen Hund, eine Katze oder einen Goldfisch. I would like a dog, a cat, or a goldfish. Entweder du räumst dein Zimmer auf, du spülst das Geschirr oder du reinigst das Bad. Either you clean your room, you wash the dishes, or you clean the bathroom. Next up is the negated version of entweder oder, weder noch. In English, we simply add n to the beginning of each word, and now we have neither nor instead of either or. In German, we remove the ent and swapped oder for noch. The end result is the same. You have several options, but you can't have any of them. This usually is limited to just two options, but just like entweder oder, you can have more than just the two options. Here are a few examples of it in action. Ich habe weder eine Katze noch einen Hund. I have neither a cat nor a dog. Er möchte weder Kaffee trinken noch einen Keks essen. He would like neither to drink coffee nor to eat a cookie. Wir dürfen weder ins Kino gehen noch in die Disco, weil ich Hausarrest habe. We can neither go to the movies nor to the club because I am grounded. Wer sich weder durch Lob verführen noch durch Tadel in Verwirrung bringen lässt, der besitzt großen Herzensfrieden. Great tranquility of heart is his who cares neither for praise nor blame. Thomas à Kempis. Literally speaking, who is neither led astray by praise nor is allowed to be brought into dismay by reproach, he has great tranquility of heart. Weder noch also does something weird. If you have two full clauses that you want to combine, weder pushes the subject to the other side of the verb. This happens with adverbial conjunctions, which is a topic for next week. This basically says that the adverb is acting like a conjunction, which means that it pushes the subject to the other side of the verb, just like any other adverb. For once, the English word order actually mirrors this, and therefore pushes the subject to the other side of the verb as well. For example, weder darf ins Kino, noch kann es ihm leisten. Neither can he go to the movies, nor can he afford it. Weder arbeite ich heute, noch muss ich in die Schule. Neither do I have to work today, nor do I have to go to school. On the other end of the continuum, we have nicht nur, sondern auch. This combination means not only, but also in English. It indicates that both the first thing and the other thing are true. Unlike the conjunctions mentioned so far, the nicht nur part of the sentence does not start with nicht nur. Instead, you put nicht nur after the verb in the first clause. Sondern auch is also a bit odd in that it can be split with extra words in between sondern and auch. You do start the second clause with sondern, however. Let's start by combining just a few words and work our way up to full clauses. Hat nicht nur einen Hund, sondern auch eine Katze. He has not only a dog, but also a cat. Trinkt nicht nur einen Kaffee, sondern auch ein Glas Wasser. He isn't drinking just a coffee, but also a glass of water. Wir fahren nicht nur in die Stadt, sondern kaufen auch ein. We are not only driving into town, but also shopping. Sie bringt nicht nur Wein für meinen Eltern, sondern gibt den Kindern auch Schokolade. She is not only bringing wine for my parents, but also bringing chocolate for the children. How do you know where to put auch? Sometimes it's next to sondern, but more often there are a few words between sondern and auch. How many words? Is there a limit? The auch in these sentences acts kind of like a placement for nicht in other sentences. If you reword the clause into a standalone sentence with nicht, you can find the placement for auch. For example, wir kaufen nicht ein. We are not shopping. Wir kaufen auch ein. We are also shopping. Sie gibt den Kindern nicht Schokolade. Or sie gibt den Kindern keine Schokolade. She isn't giving the children chocolate. Sie gibt den Kindern auch Schokolade. She is also giving the children chocolate. A synonym for nicht nur, sondern auch is sowohl als auch. It still translates as not only but also in English, but there is a very subtle difference between the two. Nicht nur, sondern auch indicates a sort of standard versus surprise or unusual juxtaposition, whereas sowohl als auch means that both things are the same. The difference in English could be expressed by the difference between nicht nur, sondern auch, not only but also, and sowohl als auch, as well as. For example, sowohl mein Bruder als auch meine Schwester haben blonde Haare. My brother as well as my sister have blonde hair. If you switch the brother and the sister in this sentence, nothing happens, nothing changes in the meaning. Sowohl meine Schwester als auch mein Bruder haben blonde Haare. My sister, as well as my brother, have blonde hair. If you try to switch them when you're using nicht nur, sondern auch, you change the meaning ever so slightly. Nicht nur mein Bruder, sondern auch meine Schwester haben blonde Haare. Not only my brother, but also my sister has blonde hair. My brother was expected to have blonde hair, but it's somewhat surprising that another family member, namely my sister, also has blonde hair. Nicht nur meine Schwester, sondern auch mein Bruder haben blonde Haare. Not only my sister, but also my brother has blonde hair. Sister was expected to have blonde hair, but it's somewhat surprising that another family member, namely my brother, has blonde hair. The difference can be more striking in other situations. The examples previously didn't really make much of a difference, but it would make a big difference in the following example. Ich führe sowohl meinen Hund Gassi als auch meine Katze. I walk my dog as well as my cat. Both parts are equal, and it's not surprising that either of them are being brought on the walk. If you switch the dog and the cat, nothing meaning-wise changes. Ich führe nicht nur meinen Hund Gassi, sondern auch meine Katze. I don't only take my dog for a walk, but also my cat. It's pretty standard to take your dog for a walk. Cats, on the other hand, aren't big fans of leashes, so this is a bit odd. Therefore, we used nicht nur, sondern auch. If you switch the dog and the cat in this example, the difference is much bigger, as people don't normally walk their cat. Generally speaking, you can use sowohl als auch, where you could use und, which is why it's not very common to see full clauses connected by sowohl als auch, and why you didn't see any in my example sentences. Next up is zwar aber, which basically is like, yeah, but. It indicates the first thing is true, but there is some additional information that is needed to contextualize this information. Here are a few examples. Zwar habe ich genügend Geld, aber ich möchte es nicht ausgeben. It's true that I have enough money, but I don't want to spend it. You can also move zwar to the adverb position. Ich habe zwar genügend Geld, aber ich möchte es nicht ausgeben. It is true that I have enough money, but I don't want to spend it. Zwar kann ich Deutsch sprechen, aber ich bin kein Deutscher. It's true that I can speak German, but I am not a German. Ich kann zwar Deutsch sprechen, bin aber kein Deutscher. It is true that I can speak German, but I'm not German. This time I move not only the word zwar, but also the word aber. This is not necessary, but again possible. Moving zwar or aber simply makes it a stylistic choice and has little difference on the meaning. If you start a sentence with zwar, you are drawing attention to the it's true part of the sentence. If you move zwar, it could be better translated in English by adding vocal emphasis on the helping word. Sometimes this is a form of being, but it can also be a modal verb, like in these examples. Ich kann zwar Deutsch sprechen, aber ich bin kein Deutscher. I can speak German, but I'm not a German. Ich habe zwar genügend Geld, aber ich möchte es nicht ausgeben. I do have enough money, but I don't want to spend it. When you move aber, it's more like adding the word however to the English translation. Ich kann zwar Deutsch sprechen, bin aber kein Deutscher. I can speak German, am however not a German. Ich habe zwar genügend Geld, möchte es aber nicht ausgeben. I do have enough money, wouldn't like to spend it however. There are a few ways to compare and contrast the clauses that are in a sentence. The first on my list is einerseits, andererseits. This is mostly related to the English on the one hand and on the other hand. For example, einerseits brauchen wir Lehrer, andererseits wollen wir sie nicht gut bezahlen. On the one hand, we need teachers, but on the other hand, we don't want to pay them well. Einerseits finde ich sie ganz nett. Andererseits kann sie manchmal nervig sein. On the one hand, I find her quite nice. On the other hand, she can be quite annoying sometimes. You don't always have to have einerseits in order to use andererseits. It can be used as a normal adverbial coordinating conjunction. This means that the subject is pushed to the other side of the verb when you use andererseits at the beginning. For example, du hast vermutlich recht. Andererseits könnte einfach Hallo sagen wollen. You probably are correct. On the other hand, he could just want to say hello. You do have to have andererseits in order to use einerseits, however. While einerseits can't stand on its own, you can put both einerseits or andererseits in an adverbial position in the sentence and the conjunction still works. For example, wollte sich einerseits berühmt machen, andererseits hat sein Publikum sehr genervt. He wanted to make himself famous on the one hand, but he annoyed his audience a lot. The combination of einerseits and andererseits is great for showing the two sides of an argument. Einerseits sollte seine Hausaufgaben machen. Andererseits sagen seine Eltern, dass sein Zimmer aufräumen sollte. On the one hand, he should do his homework. On the other hand, his parents say that he should clean his room. If you want to say that sometimes an event goes this way while at other times it goes that way, you need the word mal, twice. On its own, mal generally translates as once or sometime. When you put it at the beginning of each clause, it pushes the subject to the other side of the verb and shows the contrast between sometimes this and sometimes that. For example, mal bist du der Vogel, mal der Wurm. Sometimes you're the bird, sometimes the worm. Mal ist mein Sohn sehr süß und lustig, mal schreit nur. Sometimes my son is very sweet and funny, other times he just screams. Mal höre ich Rockmusik, mal höre ich Rapmusik. Sometimes I listen to rock music, sometimes I listen to rap music. Along the same lines is tiles. This one is another conjunction that simply repeats itself, but instead of sometimes, tiles means partly or in part. Again, it's used like an adverb, meaning that it moves the subject to the other side of the verb if you use it first. But it's also possible to move tiles to a normal adverb spot. For example, teils war der Film interessant, teils war langweilig. The film was partly interesting, partly it was boring. Mein Frühstück besteht teils aus Cornflakes, teils aus Milch. My breakfast consists partly of cornflakes, or cereal, partly of milk. All of the conjunctions so far for today have been coordinating conjunctions, meaning that they don't change the word order, or they're adverbial conjunctions, meaning that they move the subject to the other side of the verb. The last few that I want to talk about today are subordinating conjunctions that are split into two parts. The first of these is by far the most common of them, je, desto. This is a weird one for me to translate, as in English it simply means the. It's followed by a comparative form of an adjective or an adverb. Je mehr ich esse, desto dicker werde ich. The more I eat, the fatter I become. Je früher ich aufwache, desto mehr Arbeit kann ich erledigen. The earlier I wake up, the more work I can get done. Je älter ich werde, desto weniger weiß ich. The older I get, the less I know. Notice that the verb goes after the comparative form in the second clause. This is why werde is after dicker. When a subordinating conjunction is used in the first clause, as je is in these examples, the conjugated form of the verb in both clauses is next to the comma in the middle of the sentence. But since we have two parts to our conjunction this time, we have to put the conjunction first, which then has to be followed by its comparative form of the adjective, and then our verb. So the word order is, first half of the subordinating conjunction, in these examples je, subject, whatever is after that in the sentence, conjugated verb, comma, second half of the subordinating conjunction, in this case desto, comparative form of the adverb or adjective, conjugated verb, subject, and then the rest of the stuff in the sentence. You can switch out desto with umso without changing anything in the meaning. Je schneller ich fahre, umso höher ist die Möglichkeit, einen Strafzettel zu bekommen. The faster I drive, the higher the possibility of getting a ticket. Ich mag Kekse. Je größer, umso besser. I like cookies. The bigger the better. Du musst mich von der Schule abholen. Je eher, umso besser. You have to pick me up from school. The sooner, the better. The last one on my list for today doesn't really count in my opinion. It's simply a combination of a subordinating conjunction and a coordinating conjunction. You saw me use this last week and didn't even notice it. It's the combination of ob and oder. It's best translated as whether, ... or. Here are a few examples with it. Ich weiß nicht, ob der Hund einen Knochen im Garten vergraben hat oder ein Eichhörnchen meine Pflanzen gefressen hat. I don't know if the dog buried a bone in the garden or if a squirrel ate my plants. Muss mir es erklären, ob den roten oder gelben kaufen möchte. He has to explain it to me if he would like to buy the red one or the yellow one. If you're enjoying this video so far, you will love my A2 German course. This course is designed to help you master the German grammar and vocabulary at the A2 level. Check out the links in the description to find it, or just search for Elementary German with Herr Antrim wherever you do your searching. Today I will teach you how to use German adverbial conjunctions, things like also, dann, trotzdem, jedoch, and a whole lot more. These conjunctions are also known by several other names, including conjunction adverbs, conjunctional adverbs, konjunktional adverbien, conjunctive adverbs, and conjunctivitis. Okay, that last one is the scientific name for pink eye, but the rest of those were real things that people are calling these online. I call them adverbial conjunctions for consistency purposes, but the other names work too. First, as we did with the other lessons about conjunctions, we have to define what adverbial conjunctions even are. Bad definition first, they are adverbs that act like conjunctions. That isn't terribly helpful, so let's try something else. I would say they are words that are usually considered adverbs, which are words that modify basically anything in the sentence except a noun, but they are used to connect words, phrases, or clauses, like conjunctions do. For example, trotzdem is usually considered an adverb, but it means however or nevertheless, and therefore could be used as a conjunction. Let's see some examples. Seine Mutter ist sehr gemein. Ist trotzdem ganz nett. His mother is very mean. He is very nice, however. In this sentence, trotzdem simply modifies the other adverbs, ganz and nett. It's kind of showing the manner in which he is being nice. This can be combined into two sentences using trotzdem as a conjunction for the glue to hold them together. Seine Mutter ist sehr gemein, trotzdem ist ganz nett. His mother is very mean, however he is quite nice. The thing you need to pay attention to is the word order after the conjunction. With the coordinating conjunctions, the word order was not affected at all. This would put the verb after but that isn't what happened here. Subordinating conjunctions would require you to move the verb to the end of the sentence or the end of the clause, which is also not what happened here. We simply started the clause with trotzdem and moved our subject to the other side of the verb, ist. This is the same thing that happens if you start any sentence with any other adverb. The most common way to do this is to start with the time element at the beginning of the sentence and then move the subject to the other side of the verb. For example, Ich gehe heute ins Kino. I am going to the movie theater today. Heute gehe ich ins Kino. Today I am going to the movie theater. So adverbs can be placed at the beginning of a sentence or at the beginning of a clause and move the subject to the other side of the verb. Some of these adverbs can be used as conjunctions as they connect one clause to another. This is what we call adverbial conjunctions. Let's get into the list. There are a ton of adverbs that can be used to connect clauses to each other, but there are only a handful of them that are actually used in everyday conversations. I'm going to focus on the ones that are actually used in normal conversations in German, and then at the end I'll show you a big list of the other ones and how they are used. There are 5 main adverbs that basically mean therefore, that's why, or hence. They are daher, darum, deshalb, deswegen, and somit. Each of them have their own subtleties and differences, however. I could spend an entire video talking about the differences between the whys, wieso, weshalb, warum, and their answers, but this video already has enough going on in it without diving into the deep end of that. Instead, I'll try and explain them in a broader sense, but don't take this explanation as the only thing you need to know in order to master these words, as that is not the case. Daher is like saying from that, or hence, or as a result. It shows the origin of the event. For example, Der Schüler hat nichts gelernt, daher hat die Prüfung nicht bestanden. The student didn't learn anything, or study. As a result, he didn't pass the test. Ich trinke jeden Tag 4 Liter Wasser. Daher muss ich oft auf die Toilette. I drink 4 liters of water every day. Hence, I have to go to the bathroom a lot. Darum is similar to daher in that it could be translated as because, but darum carries with it the connotation of around that or about that. Sein Hund ist gestorben. Darum ist traurig. His dog died. That's why he's sad. Die Studentin liest jeden Tag 2 Bücher. Darum ist sie sehr klug. The student reads 2 books every day. That's why she is very smart. Deshalb and deswegen are difficult to tell apart. If you can reword the sentence to include the preposition wegen instead of the adverbial conjunction deswegen, you can probably use deshalb or deswegen. Ich bin mit dem Auto meines Vaters gegen einen Baum gefahren. Deswegen darf ich sein Auto nicht mehr fahren. I drove my father's car into a tree, so I am not allowed to drive his car anymore. Wegen des Unfalls darf ich sein Auto nicht mehr fahren. Because of the accident, I am not allowed to drive his car anymore. Deswegen darf ich es nicht fahren. That's why I'm not allowed to drive it. The last one on my list of similar meanings is the furthest removed from the others. Somit indicates that something was done in order to accomplish something else. It is similar in that it shows the cause of the action, but it could be translated as so that or in order to. It's important to note that somit is used in a main clause or Hauptsatz, but there's also so dass, which has a similar meaning, but is a subordinating conjunction and therefore uses a subordinate clause. Here are some examples of somit. Die Knicks haben noch einmal verloren. Somit erreichen sie dieses Jahr die Playoffs nicht. The Knicks lost again, hence they missed the playoffs again. Sam hat die meisten Punkte, somit hat sie gewonnen. Sam has the most points, with that she won. There are a few ways to say however or nonetheless in German. I talked about one in my coordinating conjunction video, doch. There are two others that I want to talk about today, allerdings and trotzdem. Allerdings is more of a feeling of all things considered, or however, while trotzdem is more like in spite of that. The difference is subtle, but the main point is that trotzdem feels stronger than allerdings. Here are a few examples of them. Die Reise durch Deutschland war anstrengend, allerdings war sie auch sehr schön. The trip through Germany was exhausting or demanding, nonetheless it was very beautiful. Die Interesse der Schüler schwindet, allerdings ist das nicht außergewöhnlich, da es schon 14 Uhr ist. The interest of the students is waning, however this is not out of the ordinary as it is already 2 p.m. Mein Bruder hat schon zu Abend gegessen, trotzdem möchte mit uns essen gehen. My brother already ate dinner, in spite of that he would like to go to dinner with us. Das Wasser ist grün, trotzdem schwimmt sie. The water is green, in spite of that she is swimming. The most common and most widely used way to say in addition to or likewise in German is außerdem. The preposition außer means besides. When you add dem to the end of it, it's like saying besides that or in addition to that. With this in mind, you can use this as a conjunction. Here are a few examples of that. Diese Schuhe sind zu klein. Außerdem fallen sie auseinander. These shoes are too small. Besides that, they are falling apart. Ich möchte noch nicht essen. Außerdem mag ich keinen Fisch. I would not like to eat yet. Besides that, I don't like fish. If you would like to say otherwise in German, sonst is a good option. For example, der Bär muss keinen Hunger haben, sonst hätte dich gefressen. The bear must not be hungry, otherwise he would have eaten you. Das erste Schwein musste gefressen werden wollen, sonst hätte sein Haus aus Stein gebaut. The first pig must have wanted to get eaten, otherwise he would have built his house out of stone. These are nowhere near the entire list of adverbial conjunctions in German. In fact, there are more than 50 of them. In this chart, you can see a list of the different adverbs that can be used as conjunctions. These are separated based on their use. Instead of giving you examples of each one individually, I will simply explain what each category means and what that means for the adverbs in that group. Copulative refers to the fact that something adds to something else in the first clause. This is why you see außerdem, besides that, in that group. Other examples would include weiter, further or furthermore, ebenso, equally or as well as, and darüber hinaus, beyond that. Lokal refers to the location of something. Daneben, for example, would be next to that, but it can also take on a more figurative meaning of that phrase. You'll notice that all of them on this list are da compounds. This is pretty common for a lot of adverbial conjunctions, as da compounds lend themselves to this kind of use very well. For more on da compounds, you can watch the video that I have linked in the description for that. Temporal expresses a time. Davor, for example, means before that, and währenddessen means during that. These are great transitional conjunctions if you're writing an essay or for use on a written part of a German exam. I would highly recommend that you learn how to use all of these well, as they will come in handy. Since they are so helpful, I wrote example sentences for most of them, with the exception of indessen, because it's not very widely used. Meine Hündin riecht die Schildkröte. Davor hat sie keine gesehen. My dog is smelling the turtle. Before that, she hadn't seen one. Meine Mutter geht einkaufen. Währenddessen bleibe ich zu Hause und zocke. My mother is going shopping. During that time, I am staying home and playing video games. Wir haben zusammen zu Abend gegessen. Danach sind wir ins Kino gegangen. We ate dinner together. After that, we went to the movies. Er spricht zuerst mit seiner Familie, anschließend mit seinem Chef. He is speaking with his family first, and after that with his boss. Next up is causal, which, as you might guess, is the cause of something. They are almost all translated as that's why or because. The most popular ones were mentioned at the beginning of this video. Konditional and consecutiv are both used to show a condition. For example, Ich habe auch ein Auto. Notfalls können wir mit ihm fahren. I have a car too. If need be, we can drive with it. Concessive refers to something that precludes another. In other words, this thing happened, but this happened anyway. For example, Der Bürgermeister sagt, wir müssen zu Hause bleiben. Dessen ungeachtet gingen viele Menschen zum Park. The mayor says we have to stay at home. Nevertheless, many people went to the park. In the category spezifizierend, you can see words that describe the extent to which something is done. The last category is adversative, meaning that it shows something that is different than the first clause. There are a bunch of these. You will also notice that the two-part conjunction einerseits and andererseits is also in this group, and it's not only a two-part conjunction, but also an adverbial conjunction. Here are a few examples from this category. Mein Hund ist sehr faul. Demgegenüber ist die Katze voller Energie. My dog is very lazy. By contrast, the cat is full of energy. Es gibt viele Nachspeisen auf dem Tisch. Nur darfst du sie nicht haben. There are a lot of desserts on the table, but you aren't allowed to have them. If you want to practice what you've learned here and take it to the next level, click the link in the description and download my Everything Conjunctions bundle, or take it to the next level and buy my book Elementary German with Herr Antrim. Das ist alles für heute. Danke fürs Zuschauen. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!